So the structure of my presentation will be first a brief introduction about the energy community, so the institution where I'm working at and its environmental dimension. Then we will dive a bit also into the let's say the scientific or the technical part of the hydrogen topic. Then I will spare a few words of the EU's hydrogen strategy that was adopted in 2020, and then its follow-up, what has happened up until now. And then the fourth part, the final part, will be the case of the energy community, and this is in particular this hydrogen study that I was mentioning in my introductory remarks. So first, energy community. Just to test the waters, who knows about the energy community, who has heard about it beforehand? Okay, yeah, 1, 2, well, yeah, that's, yeah, okay. So 10%, so to say. This is absolutely normal. Actually, this is a this is an international treaty between the EU and 9 contracting parties in the Western Balkans and in Eastern Europe. So on this map, you see the geographical scope. On the one hand, with blue, the EU member states, with yellow color, the Western Balkans and Eastern European countries that are the contracting parties to this treaty. So the Western Balkans 6, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Albania. And from Eastern Europe, it's Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia. The treaty was signed in 2005. It's in force since 2006. And originally, it also included non-EU member states at the time. So like Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia. Participation is mutually exclusive with EU membership. So once these countries entered the EU, they automatically have terminated their energy community contracting party status. Then in the meantime, there was a geographical extension. So Moldova joined in 2010, Ukraine in 2011, and Georgia is the last one in 2016 joining the treaty. And with orange, these are observers, Norway, Turkey, and Armenia. So this is the geographical sphere where we are working at. The 3 pillars of the energy community, first is to create a regional energy market. So a market dimension, a classical energy task, also including competition. The second one is the security of supply pillar. And the third one, which is also the dimension where I personally work at with my colleagues, is the sustainability of energy systems. The colleagues from the academic side, or perhaps also other colleagues, may also compare this to the so-called energy trilemma. So the equity part, which is the market dimension, the security part, which is the second pillar with the security of supply dimension, and the third one is the sustainability dimension. So this is reflected also in the Energy Community Treaty. We have an institutional structure that is mirrored more or less on EU decision-making structure. There is a ministerial council where ministers responsible for energy from the contracting parties meet annually. There is also an annual presidency system, and this is the decision-making body. There is a so-called permanent high-level group, which is more or less the equivalent of the COREPER in the EU decision-making process. So it is a level between technical level and political level. There is the secretariat where I'm personally working at, and this is more or less like the commission in the EU structure. So overseeing implementation and assisting the daily operation of the functioning of the treaty. There is also a regulatory board, which is for energy regulators. So it's more or less like ACER in the EU structure. There are also different fora in different fields, electricity forum, gas forum, oil forum, or there is also a so-called just transition forum, previously called sustainability forum. So this is our institutional setup. And then we also have a parliamentary plenum that is assisting with advice the ministerial council, and it also meets on an annual basis. And the content is actually based on EU law. So I always say that we are like an export branch of EU law in the field of energy, but also more and more in environment and especially climate towards the contracting parties. So Energy Community Acquis is actually taken from EU Acquis, modified if necessary, amended if necessary, and then compiled into the Energy Community Legal Framework. Okay, so enough of energy community. Now let's go down to hydrogen and the technical part. Hydrogen forms first. So if we remember back to chemistry class from high school, I think very few of us have done chemistry afterwards. So hydrogen is the top of the periodic table with the number 1 element number. It's abundant. It's basically you can find it everywhere. This is H2O. So this is the water molecule where you have like the two hydrogen atoms combined with the oxygen molecule forming water. This is an interesting one. Would you have a guess what this might be? This is actually a methane well. So this is naturally occurring hydrocarbons, CH4, which is coming out of the earth actually in the tundra, where you can have naturally occurring methane, and actually it's flammable as methane normally is. So you can actually even light it up very easily. Then hydrocarbons, so oil and natural gas, also contain a lot of hydrogen, and then they are used in the mining sector. And this is another interesting picture. Would you have a guess what this might be? It's not a spaceship in the middle of nowhere. Actually, this is the so-called, and I also have to peek into my notes for the precise name, is the Kola super deep borehole. It's on the Kola Peninsula in Russia, where the Soviet Union started a huge operation in 1979 to dig the largest hole into the Earth's crust. And they managed to reach more than 12 kilometers in depth. This is where they started from. And one of the most interesting, let's say, finds of this exercise was that they found natural hydrogen. So apparently the drilling mud, when they reached a certain depth, was boiling with hydrogen where they extracted it. So even in a natural pure form, you may find hydrogen. Okay, now coming more to the hydrogen types, like in the energy sector. You may have already heard about these color codes that the industry is giving to hydrogen types. So green hydrogen is mainly produced by the splitting of water, so the water molecule, through the electrolysis process. So you add electricity and you separate the hydrogen molecules from oxygen. And we will see later on like why it's quite an important notion, because also the EU hydrogen strategy focuses a lot on this notion of green hydrogen. But we have a lot of other types of hydrogen, like turquoise, for instance, which is extracted by the thermal splitting of methane, so natural gas, via the so-called methane pyrolysis, which is a process mainly still at experimental stage, and it removes carbon in a solid form. So there are no emissions of CO2, because you would have like carbon bricks as a byproduct. Then you have black or brown hydrogen. This is something that is not considered in the framework of the hydrogen economy or the hydrogen strategy, because this is still focusing on coal gasification or other industrial processes that take coal or oil as a source. So let's say the carbon intensity is still very high. Black refers to the gasification of bituminous coal, so black coal, and brown refers to the gasification of lignite, brown coal. So so this is just for the sake of being complete, but this is not something that is considered in the discussion. Now, if we come to blue hydrogen, this is a notion which we will see later on that it actually comes up also in the hydrogen strategy. Blue hydrogen is still methane based. So you start from natural gas, CH4, and then you remove actually the hydrogen from the natural gas. And then you apply the so-called CCSU technology, so carbon capture, storage and use. So it's actually methane-based hydrogen production with carbon capture and storage. It is, however, as we will see, I will have a few graphs on the different processes. This is not full carbon capture. So you would still have some CO2 emissions in the process. But it's still different to gray hydrogen, where you also have the same starting point. So you start with methane, CH4. You start removing the hydrogen, but then you will actually release the CO2 that is produced in the technical process just into the atmosphere. So this is basically hydrogen production without carbon capture and storage. Of note is that this gray hydrogen is right now also in the EU. It's 95+% of the current hydrogen production. So this is still, let's say, the business as usual. And also, if you look at the global level, this is wherever hydrogen is produced. This is still the norm. I have here in my notes in the EU, there are currently 300 electrolyzers are operating. So this is the green hydrogen, but they produce less than 4% of the total hydrogen production. This is from 2019. So it might have been improved in between a bit, but for sure not to a drastic extent. Then we have pink hydrogen. Pink hydrogen is actually also water separation using nuclear energy. So green hydrogen is actually water separation by using renewable electricity, because this is also a very electricity intensive process. We will see later on with some exemplary numbers. So pink is where you are not just using renewables as the electricity source, but nukes as well. And finally, white hydrogen. White hydrogen is actually what they have found in the Kola super deep boreholes. So this is naturally occurring hydrogen in the natural environment. Okay, so the role of hydrogen in the future energy mix. As we all know, and we have also heard both in the previous presentation and also in other presentations, we have ambitious decarbonization goals. So there is an imperative of the energy transition, both on the legal front as well as on the scientific front and even on a practical front. This also means a rather demanding outroll and increase of renewables-based electricity. And I will show also later on one of the graphs why this comes as a challenge for the energy sector. With the peak load production increasing, and this also comes with an increased need of storage. For the storage, there are different solutions available. One is the development of the electricity grids, so that they can absorb more when it needs to absorb. Batteries, they also are technical solutions for storing electricity. But then also hydrogen comes into the picture for other technical reasons that I will also have a separate slide on why it is also a good storage opportunity. Hydrogen also has a very good emission profile at use level. So if you think of the fuel cells, once you use it as a fuel, basically you don't have emissions. You would have in the oxidization process. You take the hydrogen, and with the oxidization, you actually end up back with water, H2O. This is an overview slide about the hydrogen economy, so to say. So with the different types of uses and different types of production as well. So this is what I was mentioning with the energy system. So the supply and demand. Here you have the demand curve. This is like a typical daily demand curve. So demand goes up in the morning, peaks, and then goes down in the evening as well. And then with the increased renewables capacity, this is this light blue peaks, you may have a huge fluctuation based on the sources, especially with wind and solar. So you might have actually surpluses, periodical surpluses, which then increase the need for storage. And this is where, among other sources, hydrogen also comes into the picture. So you would have like the baseload power sources that needs to provide a constant supply, and this is also the baseload that you have to provide all the time to have a stable energy system and to prevent blackouts or brownouts. And then these parts would be needed to actually to stored when there is surplus production. The same here in this, so fluctuating demand, fluctuating supply. Whenever there is whenever the demand is higher than the supply, then it's the focus would be on hydrogen use. So either via fuel cells or by using it as an energy source. And whenever there is a surplus production of electricity, then it would be more the conversion part and the production of hydrogen that would be important. This is also called the so-called P2G business concept. This is power to gas. So this is like electricity then turned into hydrogen, and then later in the supply chains turned back to electricity. Now this also comes, of course, at challenges and efficiency questions, because you have a double conversion. First, you produce hydrogen, so you take the electricity, you produce hydrogen, and then on the second part, you take the hydrogen and you produce electric energy once again. The key benefits of hydrogen, first and foremost, it's abundance and flexibility. So you would have water and other sources in abundance in the nature. However, it's also important to say that you need fresh water. So salt water is not suitable for hydrogen production. So if we then look at the water economy, this is another potential challenge as well, even though that in principle this is a benefit. It has a high gravimetric energy content. So once you actually turn it back into energy, it is very, very efficient, and I will show you a table later on with exact numbers that even compared to fossil fuels, this is pretty good. This is the energy per mass unit, so like how much energy you can take per kilogram from the energy carrier. A very key and very let's say unquestionable benefit, it's its emissions profile. So there are no carbon emissions related, or at least not directly from the use of hydrogen. Of course, the whole infrastructure is another question. Storage potential, it has good storage potential, but then also it comes with other questions and concerns, like you have to compress it. So security and safety issues also come to mind. Applicability to multiple end-use sectors, so it can be used by many different applications. So, for instance, also in heavy-duty transport, this is very viable. So, for the decarbonization of the transport sector, it's also an option apart from electric vehicles. And yeah, efficient end-use applications are available. However, we also have to be mindful of their drawbacks. So I was mentioning this high gravimetric energy content. It also has a low volumetric energy density. And I also had to come up with an example for myself to understand what is the difference between these two notions, this gravimetric energy content and volumetric energy density. And I came up with the idea of money. So if you have to put together 1 million euros, it matters whether you have to put it together from €5 notes, from 500 euro notes, from gold, or from diamonds. So if you have to do it from 5 euro notes, you probably need like quite a sizable bag. If it's 500 euro notes, you probably need a smaller bag. Quite relevant question, actually, in light of Qatargate, but let's not go into that. If you have to put it together from gold, then you need an even more like smaller bag, and from diamonds, you just need like a little pouch, and you are fine. So in that example, hydrogen is actually more like the 5 euro notes. So you need quite significant storage facilities, but it also, when you turn it back into energy, it burns much better than diamonds. So this is the example that I managed to come up with. So like with this volumetric energy density versus gravimetric energy content. So yeah, this is the second point already touched upon. So you need infrastructure for distribution and for transport, and this is not a negligible task. Some of the existing infrastructure is actually capable of handling it, especially when it comes to the gas infrastructure, distribution networks, pipelines, and so on. But it's also not just like a one-on-one solution. So it's not that you were delivering natural gas and tomorrow you will be able to use the same infrastructure for hydrogen. The overall efficiency and cost, this is also something I already slightly touched upon. So like this conversion twice, first electricity into hydrogen and then hydrogen back into electricity. So this is also not so clear, and also the whole infrastructure is costly, both to build and to operate. The industrialization of the manufacture of components for this whole infrastructure, this is also another very, very practical question, and also quite related to the cost dimension, and an increased need for a centralized approach. The colleague was showing Financial Times headlines from recent articles, and yesterday I was looking at Politico, and the headline for the whole day was about the Net Zero Industry Act, which was introduced yesterday by the European Commission, the proposal. And the headline was, "Don't burn fossil fuels, set fire to your own ideals instead." Not ideas, ideals, so principles. Because many commentators were saying like, it's not a free market, it's actually a Planwirtschaft, so like a planned economy that is coming out from this proposal. At least that was what the article was saying. This is the table I was referring to. So this gravimetric energy density. So you can see that it's actually the highest in the case of hydrogen. But when it comes to the volumetric energy density, so which is most relevant for storing it, you can see that fossil fuels are still far ahead of hydrogen. So even if you compress it significantly, 700 bars, you will only have like this 4.5 megajoule per cubic decimeter, whereas you have like almost tenfold density for the fossil fuels. So this is the let's say the mathematical example for the challenge. But when it comes to the energy density, so when you convert it back into energy, then this is like 3 times better than the fossil fuels. So this in the next few slides, I will focus a bit about production technologies, how the industry can produce hydrogen, and this is the let's say the classical example, the gray and the blue hydrogen. So gray is the top and blue is the bottom. So this is the SMR, the so-called steam methane reforming process. So you start with methane, natural gas, and you add steam, so water basically, and heat. And then with the steam methane reforming process, you reach hydrogen. And as a byproduct, you also get CO2. And in the case of gray hydrogen, which is right now the majority of hydrogen production, this is released into the atmosphere. So from a climate perspective, this is of course not that helpful. And in the blue hydrogen process, you have actually a bit more methane input. So in this example, you see there's 2.2 tons for the gray hydrogen and 2.9 for the blue hydrogen, and but you have a little less water input 4.9 tons versus 3.3 tons. And then you have carbon capture and storage, CCS. So not all CO2 is able, or it's possible to be removed, but the majority, yes. So you still have some CO2 emissions, but less than in the case of gray hydrogen. There are also other production technologies like methane pyrolysis, for instance, which is like a one-step process which creates solid byproducts, so more carbon bricks, not CO2 gas. This is the turquoise hydrogen. Partial oxidation or coal gasification, also I mentioned it, petroleum coke, or you can even add some bacteria, no, not bacteria, sorry, but some microbes into depleted oil wells for the extraction of hydrogen. But these are like the gray or the black-brown technologies, like the coal gasification. So this is for the hydrogen economy. These are not quite relevant. What is relevant and most important is the green hydrogen, which is the electrolysis process. So there you have to feed in significant amounts of electricity, whereby you would separate the H2O molecules. So you would have also water. And then with the electrolysis process, you would have hydrogen and you would have oxygen as a byproduct. So the whole CO2 question is just not coming to your desk because it's not hydrocarbon based. So the carbon is just not there in the molecule, but it's energy intensive. So you can see that in the example, it's always 1.1 ton hydrogen that is created at the end of the day. And if we go back to the steam methane reforming, you see that it implies less than 6 megawatt hours of heat as an input. And here we have almost 40 megawatt hours input as electricity. So this is without a doubt very energy intensive process. So this is the green hydrogen, which is then also by the EU hydrogen strategy and generally by the hydrogen economy is put forward as a potential solution. So let's go now into the hydrogen strategy. We have heard yesterday the presentation, the evaluation about the European Green Deal. So in December 2019, the Commission adopted the communication on the European Green Deal. So that's not a legal document, but it's a political document setting the priorities for the years to come. And it already had clear indications on the hydrogen economy. So it was when referring to the TEN-E regulation, so there's the trans-European networks in the energy field. It was saying that this should foster the deployment of innovative technologies and infrastructure such as smart grids, hydrogen networks, or carbon capture, storage, and utilization. So you may remember I said that like smart grids are also can be used as storage opportunities in the energy sector. Hydrogen as well, so use or storage, and then CCS is appearing here as well. And then here also the Commission in the EGD communication, it was clean hydrogen was put there as a priority area. The hydrogen strategy was then adopted in July 2020. It is actually remarkable speed by which it was adopted, especially in EU terms, that after the communication in the end of 2019, by mid next year, the strategy was already not just put forward, but even adopted. I will put a few highlights on the next slide about this strategy. It envisages 40 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity. So as we have heard, it's a very energy intensive process, this electrolysis. So by 2030, the strategy requires that 40 gigawatts are put there for the production of 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen. This is pretty ambitious, and we will see later on where do we stand right now with that. Perhaps even more ambitious is the target for the first phase, which is 6 gigawatt electrolysis capacity equal to 1 million tons of renewable hydrogen production by 2024. So this is like the first phase target. And that's already around the doorstep because, yeah, like end of 2024 is almost slightly more than 1.5 years. The Commission also put forward in this hydrogen strategy a dual approach. On the next slide, actually, I also imported their graphical representation of that. So this like this 10 plus 10 million tons of domestic hydrogen production and 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen imports. This is what was already hinted to at the previous presentation, the second part, the import dimension. Important to say that in this hydrogen accelerator, as they call it, it is all about clean hydrogen. So this is like, it is exclusively refers to green hydrogen, so not to gray or to blue. The role of blue, however, is acknowledged in the short and medium term. So in this strategy, there is still like a loophole about that, or a potential loophole. And in the import dimension, the institution where I'm working at, the Energy Community, and our sister organization, the Transport Community, is also particularly mentioned and spelled out. It was already in there. And in the last part of my presentation and in our study, you will also hear about like how we assessed the potential of that and the practicalities of this, what the Commission put into the hydrogen strategy. There is also a priority in the strategy to focus on industrial use and close to the point of production to avoid losses in transporting hydrogen. So energy-intensive industries that are very difficult to decarbonize, like refineries, ammonia production, or the cement industry, and so on. And in the transport sector, the focus would be also more on heavy-duty applications, so like large trucks, trains, and so on. Because for the fuel cells, you need just to compress too much hydrogen in order to be able to have like a positive energy balance. So for passenger cars, this is still quite a challenge. The key areas of the hydrogen strategy is actually fivefold. So investment support, because as we have seen in the challenges, it requires actually a huge amount of investments. The support for the production and also for the demand side to create a hydrogen market and infrastructure. Research and cooperation, and finally international cooperation, including this import dimension where also the Energy Community has a role. There were 20 key actions required by the hydrogen strategy, and they were all delivered by 2022. The assessment of the Commission is accessible at the link below. And to give you a few examples about the key actions, on the create hydrogen market and infrastructure, the Commission was referring to the TENI and TEN-T networks, so the Trans-European Networks on Energy and Transport, and the proposal for a regulation on the internal markets for hydrogen was tabled. And then for the international cooperation dimension, there was a joint communication on the southern neighborhood. So this is precisely the North Africa countries that were mentioned in the previous presentation. And also this is where the energy community related actions come into the puzzle. Now going more on the practical side, so the experience and the challenges. In November 2021, the Clean Hydrogen Partnership was established, which was also follow-up action from this hydrogen strategy. So the industry is already progressing ahead, actually at quite fast pace. And then in 2022, projects both on the production side, so that's called the IPCEI High to Tech. IPCEI stands for Important Projects for Common European Interest. So this is the same concept that was used beforehand for the PCI, the projects of common interest. So 41 projects were identified in the production end, 15 member states and 35 companies, and a sizable amount of more than 5 billion euros for this kind of support, financial support. And then the high to use, so also important projects of common European interest, but on the use side, were also approved in September last year. However, significant challenges also still remain in the hydrogen economy. So there is a delay in project outroll, and then the Hydrogen Europe Clean Energy Monitor, I will just quote from their 2022 report. They said the 2020 report, so their own 2020 report, expected 523 megawatts to come online in 2022, while the 2021 report only expected 253 megawatts for the same year. And by August 2022, only 35 megawatts came online. So between ambition and realization, there is still a gap. And for us lawyers, perhaps the most, I mean, not for the environmental lawyers, but more for the energy lawyers, the main issue that was identified was the regulatory and the permitting issues and the delays there. The gas price shock and its consequences last year, it is actually a challenge, but I also had an opportunity at the same time. I have a graph on that. Oops, sorry. So this is the TTF gas price on a 5-year scale. So you can see the gigantic peaks last year, which actually meant that the case of green versus gray hydrogen at these huge prices, whenever it was like above 100 euros, but especially 150, there it was it was, you know, the economics behind was changing a lot, because if your raw material is natural gas and you have to buy it at these prices, then your project economics quite drastically changes, which was kind of a natural push towards green hydrogen. But now what we have seen this year is that the gas prices actually went significantly down, and now we are actually at almost at pre-war levels, so to say, which then again changes the project economics. Another driver is the CO2 price. So the higher the CO2 price is, of course, that also creates a push towards green hydrogen. I just also put the UK gas price, where we can see that it's more or less moving together with the TTF price, and then the US Henry Hub gas price, which is far less concerned, but it still shows similar trends. So going back here, equipment bottlenecks. So the production of necessary equipment for hydrogen production plants and also for use facilities have not necessarily yet picked up with the ambition level, and there we end up with the similar situation like in many other industries, like supply chains were sometimes broken due to COVID, or now also as a consequence of the war. We can see that that economic blocks are more and more building up, which is then hindering trade. So this can have a rolling effect on production. Another interesting element is the critical raw materials and the accessibility of the critical raw materials that are needed for the production of hydrogen infrastructure, whether it's production infrastructure or transmission infrastructure. The Commission actually, since 2011, publishes a so-called critical raw material monitor every 3 years. And just to give you an indication how this changes, in 2011, in the first report, it was 14 critical raw materials identified. In 2014, it was 20. 2017, it was already 27. And in 2020, already 30 of such critical raw materials. And I wonder in 2023, when it's you know, the next report will come out, I guess it's going to be probably even more. Although the pace of increase is kind of lower, but let's see. And I also have a map on that. Sorry, this is the one. And for the hydrogen infrastructure in particular, there are two raw materials that are key. One is platinum and the other one is palladium. And you can see platinum here, South Africa, responsible for 71% of global production, and palladium is over here. And that's an issue. So this is quite a bottleneck, and it's a $1 million question how this could be tackled, whether the mining industry is ready to look for other sources. I mean, at least to give a positive note, it's not as bad as with rare earth elements. Like here, you see these numbers with China, 99% and so, but still, it is definitely a bottleneck. The costs, the technology, the efficiency, this is something that I already touched upon on the occasion of other slides. So like the efficiency of conversion, double conversion, like once to hydrogen, then to electricity, the infrastructure costs, the technological questions. On the import side, so like this 10 million tons ambition of the Commission, so like to have the 10 million domestic production and 10 million imported one, it's a question mark whether it's an outsourced risk when it comes to infrastructure. After Nord Stream 2, it's security and safety of infrastructure is also nowadays has become a question mark, and also the political and economic stability of the countries that we would be relying on the imports. And of course, the case of Ukraine, one of our contracting parties, is also one of the examples of this risk. And I will show you in the framework of the energy community study why that is the case. And the last point, this peak production renewables versus industry needs for stable supply. If you recall this supply demand graph from the beginning, industry is usually requesting a stable energy supply. So for them to say that, okay, when there is surplus energy, then let's produce hydrogen, which you may be using later on, it might not be a viable application, because what they need to secure for the manufacturing processes is a constant and stable energy supply, whether it's electricity or other sources of energy. Okay, so now we are getting to the case of the energy community and the energy community study that we were conducting, the hydrogen study. The purpose was to assist our contracting parties based on the EU hydrogen strategy and the clear reference in there, the energy community, to assess their potential. So it was a hydrogen potential assessment study on the production side, on the transport side, and also on the use side of hydrogen in their different sectors, to raise awareness, because as I started my presentation with, hydrogen was also just a few years ago very little known, even in the EU, and even less probably in the energy community countries, to kick off and initiate this discussion, to have like a realistic picture of their potential in hydrogen, and to provide the options for them, like what could they do to foster their hydrogen economy. So it was first an international review of the industry, so the value chain, the drivers, then policies, and so on. Then there was a review of the contracting parties themselves, so all 9 of them, and I will show you the results and the outcome. And there was an economic analysis, like where it would be most suitable to think into the hydrogen directions, so to say. The comparative assessment framework of this study. So for the hydrogen potential, it was like 5 areas. So we were looking into the drivers, the potentials, the delivery, the potential of hydrogen applications, and then the options, the socio and economic conditions for hydrogen use as well. When it comes to the drivers, there were several factors assessed. So, for instance, carbon intensity, because basically the higher carbon intensity your energy sector has, the better potentials there are for hydrogen, because it's a decarbonization potential after all. So this explains then later the results that you will see, and also what were also surprising first for myself. So it's the same here for the fossil fuel share. So you can see that, for instance, in Albania, there is practically no fossil fuel use. They are very much relying on hydropower. In comparison to just neighboring Kosovo, where you have like a 90+% coal-based electricity system. So there are huge differences in that terms among the contracting parties, which also influence their hydrogen potential. Then the renewables potential were assessed, and also the share of key industrial applications, because if you have heavy industry, that also means a lot of hydrogen potential, because there you can decarbonize nicely. If you don't, however, then of course this is also a different story. So you can see that also here you have a lot of differences between the contracting parties, with Ukraine having a lot of such applications and industries, whereas the other end of the spectrum, very little. And this is the outcome. So with red, you see it's like not really a good case for promoting hydrogen. And then with orange, yellow, and up to green, it's the most best fit to promote hydrogen. And Ukraine is actually the one which scores best, with 3 green ones, 1 orange, and 1 red. So it's only the socioeconomic conditions. So that was more a GDP based assessment. And however, for the potential for hydrogen production capacity, the delivery infrastructure, because of the very established gas network throughout the country, and then the potential hydrogen applications, they were all scoring well. Now, the study was done in 2021, and then in 2022, the world turned around. So this also has to be taken into account. But nevertheless, we really hope that like the war will not go on forever, and then the potential will remain. At least also the gas infrastructure is more or less spared in the country. So we hope that once it's over, then this can be taken up. And this is the import dimension that also the EU hydrogen strategy was referring to in relation to Ukraine in particular. So there are options through the so-called pipeline routes, so using the existing gas transmission networks, sea route for ammonia or other hydrogen carriers, or the Danube route, so fluvial transport up to the Danube. So these were the import options that were assessed in the study. And the study is publicly available if you would like to go through it. It's actually 4 different studies, so 4 different chapters. So I invite you to look into it if you're interested. Thank you very much once again for your attention and for the invitation. And if there are any questions, I will try to answer them. Thank you.